It is so good to be back and working on this painting. I don't usually like to let paintings sit on my desk for so long unfinished, but I've been having classes and doing online competitions and things like that. So if you've been following along with me, you've been seeing all the things that I've been up to. But it's so good to get back to this and get back to working on it. So I'm not happy with the shadows that I originally put in. They are too gray. I don't like them. It is how it really was in the photo, but I think that I want them to have a little bit more of a blue tint to them. So what I'm doing with clean water, I'm just re-wetting this whole area all the way out to the end so that it'll have a nice blended edge. So right now with clean water, I'm just wetting over my original shadow that I have in here, making sure that it's all even and wet. And then I'm going to take my new mixture that is the same shadow color but also just has a little bit more blue in it, and come in and just go over that original shadow. I feel like with the gray, it just really, it was too bland. It kind of washed out the painting. So I'm just going to come back and add this shadow back in right on top of it, darkening the original as well as adding that nice blue tint to it. So because I did the whole thing wet into wet, I can get it nice and blended on the edges and just let it naturally blend off and be smooth. There's all different ways that you can add a shadow to something. This is just one of them, but if I have a white background on a painting, this is definitely the easiest way to add a shadow and have it blend off naturally on that edge. So we'll just get that all in like that. And then it has that nice blue look to it. I like that so much better than the gray. So if you have been following along with my painting of paint, I am at the point where I'm putting my final shadows in. And I've put them all in with multiple layers of wet into wet. But my edges, I have a few edges that were a little rough or shadows that I went a little further than I wanted them to. So I'm just taking my lifting brush, which is actually an acrylic brush. It's a Rockcliffe 250 LH number 0. I find that the bristles are just a little bit stiffer than a watercolor brush, but not stiff enough to harm the paper, so it's perfect for lifting on watercolor paper. So I'm just taking my brush with some clean water and a clean paper towel, and I'm just lifting the edge of these water lines. So in a few spots you can see where my wet into wet went right to the edge of my water and left an uneven hard line. So all I'm doing is going back in and lifting those edges so that it ends up looking like a nice blurred edge instead of an edge that has that line on the white paper. Now obviously I can do this on this painting because there is no background. If this had a background image, if it was sitting on a table that was a color or something like that, I obviously would have had to plan differently from the beginning because I would not be able to lift these edges like this because it would pull up the background as well. So just a different way that I would plan it if that's how I was doing a painting with a background. But since this one does have an all-white background, it's really easy to just alter the edges of these shadows. And again, you can see I'm just gently adding water and then going in and just softening that edge line of that final shadow. And then also if there's anywhere where your shadow got a little crazy or a little too big, you can easily just go lift that. Now when I started doing the shadow, I made sure that the colors I was using to do the shadow were colors that I could lift. So that's something that you just have to think about at the beginning of your painting. You want to know what your plan is before you decide the colors that you're going to use. Because if the colors that you use are colors that do not lift, then obviously this method is not going to work. So you need to make sure that you've tested the colors that you're using on your painting before you actually start painting. And know, do I need to lift these colors? Can they be staining colors? Am I going to put multiple washes over so I want them to be staining colors? Whereas a color that would lift easily would come up too easily if you had to put multiple layers down. So one of the biggest parts that I find to doing a successful watercolor painting is actually the planning stage before I even start. Making sure that the colors that I'm going to use on my painting are colors that either lift or stain or granulate. I want to know the properties of all those colors before I start to make sure that once I start, I'm not surprised in the end that, oh my gosh, I need to lift this color, but this is a staining color and it won't lift. So just things you want to think about in the planning stages of a painting so you know what you need to do by the end. Thanks so much for joining me. You can see many other videos of this painting on my Facebook or Instagram. And I hope you will join me for my class that starts at the end of this week as well. Or check back soon for more updates on this painting. Thanks so much.